Welcome to the One Priority Podcast, where our goal is starting and strengthening congregations to serve as vital and vibrant missional communities. The One Priority Podcast is sponsored and supported by the Columbia Metro Baptist Association and the almost 100 family churches that support the ministry of the CMBA. As always, George Bullard, the Executive Director of the Columbia Metro Baptist Association, is our host, and I'm Chris Reynolds, lead pastor at Killian Baptist Church. As we're all keenly aware, the arrival of COVID-19 has deeply affected our world. This week, we have an opportunity to sit down with a handful of pastors to discuss the ups and downs, the ins and outs of their regathering of churches in the midst of a pandemic.
You know, during this time of regathering, it really is important to talk to some of the pastors about the kinds of things that they're experiencing. So we're glad to have with us this morning Devon from St. Andrew's Baptist Church and Cameron DeBrew from Beulah Baptist Church and Craig Bailey from First Baptist Church of Winsboro. So we welcome you, gentlemen. Glad to have you today. And I'd like to start out with pitching a question first to Craig Bailey. Craig, what are some of the preemptive steps that your church has taken to protect the health of your members? And how long do you see this lasting for you, this protection method?
Well, we have tried to change the atmosphere, and again, because our worship is now primarily outside, some of these things almost seem like a moot point. But we set up hand sanitizing stations all throughout the building. We made it where our folks who come to outdoor worship, there's a door already open for them if they want to come in and go to the restrooms. And there are hand sanitizing stations on the way in. And we provided, because we found some folks don't like antibacterial soap for some reason. We've provided in our restrooms both antibacterial and regular soap. We've made it where the lights are already on. Just any precaution we could make to make people feel more comfortable about coming in the building or not. We have our auditorium set up to where every seat is clearly marked where you can and cannot sit, so that when folks do come in for worship, they have no problem finding a place where they'll be at least 6 feet away from someone else. But the issue of masks, because in Winsboro there's it's not a law. What do you call these things? It's not a directive. Maybe it's just a big suggestion that everybody in all the businesses and like ask folks to wear masks to come in. We ask folks to wear a mask as you were coming in to worship for inside. And then the results of all of that have been that our folks basically don't like inside worship. So we made all those issues there. Our church office is technically closed, although our office people are working in it. We ask folks to call, make an appointment if you're coming, and if you come to our office, wear a mask.
Right.
So these are some of the precautions that we have made, but it has resulted in our folks, both from voting with their feet and letting us know through some surveys we've done, that they love outdoor worship. They love the freedom of being outside. They don't have to wear a mask. They can stay far apart from each other. They can come out and bring a lawn chair and a snack. Some bring their dogs. I mean, they bring everything, or they tailgate off their vehicles or sit in their cars. And we have a great outdoor worship. We just pump it out with a strong sound system. Our praise team sings, and people just don't want to leave. So the precautions we've taken to allow them to come in the building have been okay. Everybody seems to be pleased with that, but they still don't want to come in the building.
Yeah. Yeah, I called yours a BYOC service. In other words, bring your own chair. Had the opportunity to come and worship with you, and it's a great place under those trees for the worship. You have an advantage over some of the other churches doing outdoor worship, which is that you have the shaded area. Some do not have that possibility.
Yeah, that's good stuff. That's good. You know, one of the questions that a lot of the churches are grappling with is, we're putting all these precautions in place. We're putting all these measures and taking all of these things that we're trying to make sure that we keep people safe. But what are we going to do if someone in the congregation that's been coming regularly turns a positive? What then? How do we proceed forward? Now, the interesting thing is, this is actually something that St. Andrews faced. How did you guys deal with this? And then what did you learn about moving forward following that particular situation?
Well, the first Sunday that we came back together for on-campus worship was June the 7th, which was the same day that the headline in the state paper was 500 new cases diagnosed yesterday. And it's very likely that in that gathering, one of our staff members was exposed to someone who had COVID. We believe that's most likely the place where she contracted it. Once her diagnosis was confirmed, once the test was done and we knew what was going on, we notified the church family through a mass email for those who had been at worship to know that someone on our staff tested positive, and for them to pay, even extra closer attention to their health. That also was a factor in us. That was the only Sunday we came together on campus. Mm-hmm. We have so many people in our congregation who are in a very high risk category because of underlying conditions and age, right, that we reverted to videotaping worship services and broadcasting them on Facebook and YouTube. Mm-hmm. And that's this posture we've been in to this day.
Yeah. Now, what do you think as far as moving forward? How long do you see this continuing and just doing the recording? At what point do you think that you guys are going to feel comfortable moving back to in-person worship?
If I waited till I was comfortable, I'd probably retire before this would happen. But the truth is, we're watching the numbers. Yeah. The new cases, which has stabilized a little in recent days at a high level, but it's stabilized. Mm-hmm. But we certainly didn't feel we could come back together while the incidents were just spiking up exponentially. Yeah. But when we see the case numbers down some and at a stable level, we've thought everything through because we had that one trial Sunday, right, and we believe our measures were good. So we're ready. We just want the situation to be such that we feel confident that it's not too high a risk for the congregation.
Makes sense.
Well, one of the things I would say to folks is we're recording this on Thursday, July the 30th, and just yesterday, the Barna Group and GLOW, who are in partnership together, revealed a survey that 5% of all churches have already decided not to come back to live worship until January. And so that's an interesting piece. But you were talking about following the statistics, Dee, and I think you're correct. One of the statistics I look at is the percentage of people tested who are positive. And I do believe in that issue of getting it down to 5% before you can really say that it's truly safe. And we're still having it in the teens percentile in South Carolina at this point.
Well, we know that we have a group of folks who probably will not come back to the church building to worship until there's a vaccine because of their fragile health. But one of the things we've learned is we call our staff old dogs doing new tricks these days. But we've learned about live streaming and recording, and we're going to continue to offer that as part of our ministry. That's something good that's come out of this for us, and it will allow those folks to stay connected, and people who for a variety of circumstances may not be able to come to the church building on a given week can still be connected to their church family through worship.
Good. Cameron, how is your church doing? One of the things we think about in regard to our whole process is that the word change is sort of like a four-letter word for Baptists, and so what are the habits of having change in your church in the new era? How is Beulah doing in addressing these kinds of things, and what are the areas of ministry that are advancing in your context and ones that are struggling in your context at this point?
Yeah, thank you, George. We have, like St. Andrews, we opened the first Sunday of June. We have remained open through that whole time. And so far, we have continued to have worship. About 45% or 50% of our folks have come back. So we have, there for a while, this virus didn't have a name to it. You know, we weren't able to put a name to someone that we knew that had it. Just recently have we begun to have some folks that have been that have tested positive. Fortunately, none of those folks were in our services for those days. And just let me start with some of the challenges to some of our ministries. Our people are starving for community. Even though we're able to be together, and even though we're able to come into a worship service together, the conversations that I've had with young and old of just, I feel so disconnected. I feel like I don't know what's going on. That has been a struggle for us to figure out ways to get people together in smaller groups, maybe in their backyards, around their pools, to have Sunday school some other way than Zoom. You know, that is one of the big challenges we've had. We also have some community ministries that we do, for instance, with the schools and with the football team here at Little Richland. We have some community things where we serve the community and we're visible in the community. And of course, we're just not able to do those things because they're not going on. So those people who find their passion serving Christ through those ministries, we're finding some disconnect with those folks. Where I would say some things that has been positive is how quickly and how readily our folks did adapt to online, how quickly they took to Zoom Sunday school, and how quickly they allowed technology to kind of replace what we were doing. We are a small congregation, and just like these other brothers have said, we had to learn to do a lot of things, and we had to wait to buy equipment and all kinds of other challenges that were in front of us. So the word change has been big for us because, you know, sometimes I just come in my office and I'm like, so what am I supposed to do today? This wasn't a course I took in seminary.
Right.
Yep.
And a part of that is, as well, is the aspect of doing ministry. And I think that all pastors right now are struggling with that reality of how are we doing ministry in a current pandemic and even in a post-pandemic world, because we see how this is going to affect things for the long term. So I guess my question to all of you guys would be, what are some of your thoughts, not all of them, but what are some of your thoughts to where you see the direction of ministry taking, as far as ministry to the community, ministry to those inside the context of the church? Where are you seeing it go, and how are you beginning to make adaptations to prepare for that inevitability?
Yeah, so I certainly think that social media has become our friend. Being able to package things in a way that we can distribute to our folks has become our friend. One of the things that I'll just quickly mention, we have many ministry partners, whether it's missionaries we support or whether it's some other ministry that we support. And so over these past several weeks, I have done what we call partner connections, where I've just done a Zoom interview just like this with those partners and allowed them to give us prayer requests and give us updates on what's going on in their part of the world, and some of those even locally. And so we're able to actually get our ministry partners in front of our people better now than we have ever.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the changes we've made is this. In other words, we have typically recorded all of our podcasts face to face, and so we're now recording all of our podcasts online, and that makes a key difference. But in response to Chris's question, what are some of the others of you doing or seeing long term?
Well, I think it's changing the way we perceive church is going to be in the future, even post-vaccine. We're already talking about how there will be 3 worship options at a minimum every week. We will try to continue to do some kind of outdoor worship that during the wintertime may move into the Family Life Center, into the gym, as well as a worship service in more traditional fashion in the sanctuary. And we'll continue online worship. It seems like that's a 3-pronged future that I think we've just accepted and we're going to be doing. How we do small groups and other things, all of that is going to change, but it seems like we're facing the future of not just multiplied ministry, but how to raise the bar on the way we're doing social media and online ministry. We're actually talking to a couple of folks to perhaps add some part-time staff to just help us raise the bar. For guys, y'all like me, this has probably been a new paradigm shift for us to think about doing so much work in the way of whether it's personal devotionals or connecting with our people by staring into a computer screen or a camera and talking. It's brand new, and we need to, work on it to make it better. So that's our future. I mean, there's no turning back from this. It's where the church is headed.
Craig, you mentioned one thing there before Dee maybe responds to the same question. You talk about the staring into the camera. One of the things I've done is to look at a lot of different church services. And one of the things that one of our larger churches asked me to do a real in-depth analysis of their online presence and their online appeal kind of thing. And one of the issues was no worship leader ever looked into the camera. And I said, so therefore you were just recording something that people had a secondary observation of, as opposed to speaking to the people who had joined you virtually. And that's a very crucial issue about looking into the camera. It seems small, but it's big.
And that's one of the changes that we actually made as well, to where we're trying to pre-record our services, our sermons, to where the pastor is actually looking into the camera as they speak. That way, those that are viewing online feel like it's communicated to them. Dee, what about you? Where do you see the future of things going?
Well, one thing about technology, a few weeks into doing this, my wife Linda commented, I never realized that where your notes are would be such an important issue in my experience of worship.
Mm-hmm.
Because in a pulpit, it's just sort of the way it is.
Right.
And I actually built a little teleprompter type device so I can look into the camera while I speak.
Yeah.
And that has really been helpful to me because I'm not, cutting away. I have seen creativity in our people trying, a will in search of a way to do things that they're passionate about, and I'm grateful for that. We have a big school ministry to an elementary school that's just across the parking lot from us. And every year, this time of year, folks go out and buy school supplies that we bring together to supplement what that school has. Well, we couldn't ask them to go out and shop this year. So this year, the appeal was for funds. And we had a few designated shoppers who, knew how to glove up and mask up and all the things. And the same thing's happening. We're just having to do it a different way. Mm-hmm. But I've also found we've got to work much harder on celebrating those accomplishments because people aren't together in the same way to talk about it and hear about it.
Right.
So I go out of my way to say, let me tell you something that happened this week.
That's good.
Or those sort of things to keep that sense of community and let people know that what they're doing is paying off and touching people's lives, even in this restricted environment.
Yeah, that's good.
Dee, I did want to ask you another question that speaks to something that I believe that your church is doing that I think is very important in regard to what Cameron talked about, and that is the whole issue of community. Some of our pastors, I see them doing a lot of declaring. In other words, we've got some pastors who even now do online a daily devotion talking to their people. But isn't it your church that has just a community gathering online where people can call in and just talk to one another on a video conference call. And so that helps, I think, engender community. And so it's not deep on pontificating, it's the people talking to one another. Tell us about that.
Well, Tuesday nights at 6 o'clock, we have a Zoom meeting that we simply call Time Together. And we send an email with the link to it to our church members, Sunday school members, guests, our list.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone who chooses to can come on. And there's not a huge agenda. I do find that people try to catch up on each other and catch up on needs that they know of. Someone will ask, how is so-and-so doing? And that's good. But sometimes it's almost teasing with each other. And that's what you miss, is that, hallway banter and just the friendship of it. I wish I had recorded some of our first ones, because a significant part of the time was people trying to coach each other in how to use the media. You have looks like a little camera down at the left. Once I found that, it got a lot better for me. And, it went on and on. And we had the infamous moment when one of our senior adults made the comment to another lady who was there. She says, "I'm not sure I know you, but you certainly do talk a lot." So you get what you get, but it has been just an open forum for fellowship, and people end up ministering to each other in a lot of ways, but they just enjoy being together.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Now, Craig, we talk about the different groups that make up a church, but you've seen and been talking about recently the struggle, because there's actually two different groups that you think that are going to be very slow and that have been very slow to return to any sort of gathering together. So who are these two groups, and then how are you guys doing at pulling in? How are you doing, Craig, at pulling these two groups into the gatherings?
Well, the group that you would obviously suspect are many of our senior adults,
Mm-hmm.
some who, because of age and underlying conditions, really need to be concerned. I've got one deacon who is in his upper 70s who has said, look, his kids have locked him down. He does not get out. They are very concerned about him. And so the only way we make contact with him is through an online presence.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a lot of the elderly, some who have been through cancer treatments, have compromised immune systems, other issues, and they are going to be slow to come back to anything in person inside.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got another group that is quite interesting, and that is those parents with young children. And we've got a couple of children with special needs and some compromised immune systems. And we find these parents are very, very protective of their children, as you would suspect. And they are concerned that they will get these children who maybe not even aware that they may have COVID themselves, because they're not showing any symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
They're concerned that they're going to come pick up COVID and or infect someone else because of their children. I wish I could tell you I've had a lot of success in getting either of those groups to engage in anything outside of the online presence. But the closest thing we've had is the families with children seem to be a little bit more comfortable with the outside worship service, and they're fine with that. But those two groups are at complete opposite poles, yet they are strongly concerned about what's going to happen if they get their families out and too much involved with other people.
Right.
So if I can speak to that, we are actually doing Vacation Bible School this week online. This is I tell our church every week we've done something historic this week. So this was a historic thing for us to kind of package Vacation Bible School. And what we're seeing, our younger folks, to speak to what Craig was saying, some of our younger families with children who already had a friendship with each other, that maybe even their children had friendships, they are doing Bible school together. So they are going to each other's homes and viewing those things. And I honestly, to kind of go back to one of the former questions, I think that is beginning to be the church of the future, that we gather in smaller groups in more private, intimate settings. It's less produced and less tradition of what we know. And we're just we're providing some resources to those families, and then to speak to our older congregation. I've talked to them more on the phone in the past 4 months than I ever have. And now it's getting to the point where I can call them and say, if you'll be out on your front porch, I'll drive up to your front porch and I'll have a conversation with you, or, I'll have a visit with you. Some of them are living with their kids who have a large backyard, and so they allow me to come and sit in the backyard, socially distanced from their older parent. And so we're just having to find new ways to connect those people and to keep those people part of the community.
Yep. Very important.
That's good. That's good. Well, guys,
an issue that has been real for us that I didn't anticipate, but we've been asking what's essential, because we can't do everything in the ways that we're doing it, and what's most important. And that's been I think it's been a unifying thing for our staff and for our church, to get back to say, some things are not as important as others, and what are those in the life of the church. And I think that's something good that's going to come out of this that will influence us in the future post-COVID.
I'm finding some churches saying, we all of a sudden have realized that we don't need all this building space. The church of the future is going to be both gathered and scattered, and there's not going to need to be as much facilities as there has been in the past. So either we've got to find alternate uses for it, or we've got to pray that God would find a way to bless it.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, we've seen the shift into our folks mentally. We had some, what we call life groups, the small groups that meet in homes. But now this is what everybody wants to do. They're finding out that this is the preferred method of future discipleship. A small group of families that can meet casually in somebody's home, somebody's neighborhood, and operate from there, very much like the church in the book of Acts, the first church. So it may not be a bad thing, but maybe just taking us back to our foundation.
Yeah, good. Well, guys, we really do appreciate you taking the time out of today to be able to come on this podcast and share essentially with other pastors about what it is that y'all are doing, how it is that you're succeeding. And I know that it's probably been encouragement to those that have been able to listen into that. So thank you so much for taking the time for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
And to all of our listeners, thank you for joining with us. And please be sure to check out the show notes for more detailed information about today's show. Also, if you found this podcast helpful for you and your ministry, share it with others so we can get the word out about what God is doing. Until next time, from all of us, we thank you for listening and urge you to share this podcast with everyone you know. It's the good news about the good news in the Columbia Metro Baptist Association.